You may have been able to get through all of your high school math courses without ever reading a textbook. However, since math and stats classes at the college level move very quickly, and since there's so much material you need to learn, you will need to be able to read your textbook to help you succeed in your class. This video will help you find strategies that you can use. Reading a textbook, especially a math textbook, is much different than reading for pleasure. Like a math class, there are a lot of pieces of information crammed into a textbook, whether an online book like in WebAssign or My Math or My Stat Lab, or a physical book, maybe you've got one for your stats or your college algebra or your math for teachers course. So first you need to plan to take some time to read. The schedule that you created at the beginning of the semester should have time built in for reading over your textbook. If it's not there, put it in. Plan to slow way down on reading difficult passages so that you can understand them. And at least skim over the section before going to class. You'll feel more confident about new terms and ideas that the instructor discusses during class. Now, don't multitask either while you're reading. Think about why it's dangerous to text and drive. You won't have a life or death situation if you're on your phone while reading, but studies show that you won't get much out of it if there are other things going on while you're trying to read. When possible, find a place that is free of distractions. Distractions could be TV, friends, family, phone, loud noises, whatever. Go to that place that you found to study and to read. So what follows are some effective strategies. These all have been shown through research to be effective. We're going to go through some of these to see if we can help you out. Okay, the first strategy is called the SOAR, S-O-A-R, which is a mnemonic that we'll talk about later, but what it stands for is the four things you see down the side here. Select. That means you need to distinguish important information from less important information in your book. Some books have history or stories, and that's likely to be less important in a math or stats class. So look for things like formulas or examples of how to do the problem. Look for discussion of common mistakes. Look for concepts. Look for the objectives. You might actually end up highlighting in a physical book or marking in a physical book. If it's electronic, you're just copying down important items. And then the O stands for organize. Once you've copied down or highlighted those important items, convert it into another format, whether that's a table, a chart, a list, some other way that you understand what's going on in the textbook. Put it in your own words. Then associate. That means looking for connections between the important information. This can be information within the section, but even more important, look for connections with past materials that you have covered in this class that you're in now or in a previous math class. And finally, for the SOAR, regulate. Assess yourself regularly. This means test yourself. Do you know how to do problems? Try them without looking at your notes. Do you know terms and definitions? Quiz yourself. Do you know concepts? See if you really do. If you find you don't know something, find assistance from your instructor, your classmate, someone in the Math Learning Center, and don't wait to get assistance. All right, the second strategy is called the SQ3R. Sometimes it has different words, but you can see there's an SQ and then three words that starts with R. So let's go through those. You'll find this is similar to SOAR. In fact, it incorporates the SOAR method. You decide what works for you and will help you remember as you go through things. So first, looking for important information, like in selecting, by looking at how the text is organized. Look for student resources. Sometimes there's links. Explain more. Show a video. Find out where those are. Use them if you need them. Look for the learning objectives, the summaries, etc. The Q is for question. Ask yourself questions before and while you read. So what's the main idea of the section? What are the learning goals? If they're not stated as objectives or goals or outcomes in the book, ask your instructor what their learning goal is for the section. And then you're actually going to read. Well, that means write notes while you're reading on important items. Convert it to your own words or some other form like the table, list, chart, so that you can really start to understand the information. This is the organizing step in the SOAR method. Review. Look at the notes you wrote regularly from all the readings. What connections can you make between them or between the reading and what happened in class? This is the association. Math builds on itself, as you probably know by now, so often the new material relies on you understanding what's going on in the past and being able to make that connection. Finally, recite. Say the information out loud or write it on paper. Do this at least weekly. More may be better. It may help to work with a partner who's also trying to learn the same information. You can quiz each other. Test yourself weekly. This is the regulating step as well. All right, the semantic features chart is something that may help you connect or understand properties or connected concepts. Perhaps you could make one. Here's an example for different types of quadrilaterals, but perhaps you could make one for different types of functions. Perhaps down the side is linear, quadratic, exponential, absolute value, whatever you're studying. And then across the top are different things they have in common, what their graphs look like, what a table might look like, anything that would help you. You may be looking at operations at fractions, so you'd write add, subtract, multiply, and divide down the side. Across the top, what are things that would be useful to help you solve that? Like, for example, common denominators, whatever. Perhaps down the side, different types of hypothesis testing. When to use each, what you need to complete the problems, etc. go across the top. Maybe types of graphs down the side and different characteristics of those across the top. All right, so now learning math vocabulary can be difficult, so these next few slides are going to go over some specific ways to help learn math vocabulary or formulas or steps to solve a problem. First, create a list. Have one section of your notebook to list every new math word that you don't already know well, so make a specific section for that vocabulary. Look up the definition. Dictionaries seem great, but you want to know how does it pertain to the math meaning. And that's usually going to be in the reading or maybe in the glossary in the back of the book. You may need to look online if you don't understand a particular definition. And the Frayer model is a great way to try to learn new vocabulary. Start with the term in the middle oval. Write the official definition in its box on the left there, then any characteristics or facts in the box on the right. The bottom two boxes are for examples and non-examples. So those are the things that are going to help you know what it is and what it is not. I sometimes put a graph or table or word problem in the examples and non-examples because that may help me see and understand the new term. Here's a couple examples. The first one defines an octagon. Notice what's in each box there. And the second defines composite numbers. And the Frayer model can be used for more complicated terms since it gives a variety of ways to show what the term means. This will help you understand many new math terms. I like to use this model a lot. Flashcards. This is one you've known for years probably. Use 3x5 cards to create flashcards for every section you read. This may be one card in a section, but it could easily be many more. Mix up all your cards and use them to practice. Only look at one side of the card, write down what you think should be on the back, then look to see if you are correct. This is a great activity with a partner, but you can easily do it alone. Concept maps. Here's a couple examples. I like to use these to connect several sections or ideas together. The associate and review portions of that SOAR and SQ3R strategies will help you. Is this part where you would use the connections. So start with a bigger concept in the middle, like for example, I've got linear functions or trigonometry. Then use lines to connect the main ideas to the bigger concept. Continue branching out with lines and words until you've connected everything you know about the concept. You can, and you should, there's not in here on the one on the left, but you should use equations, pictures, graphs, tables to help fill in the map. It's a really good idea to start at the beginning of a chapter, label everything you know at the beginning, and then as you go through each new section, continue to add information. Studies show that when you complete these yourself, you are much more likely to really understand many of the concepts. And learning the math vocabulary, so academic language, many words have a totally different meaning in math. For example, you might have a mean person versus finding the mean of several numbers. A product that a company is selling versus multiplying two numbers to get the product. A combine used on a farm versus combining like terms. Or maybe two people who look similar versus similar triangles. Understanding the meaning as it applies to math is understanding academic language. Your textbook and your instructor will use academic language. You should use the strategies in this video to be able to learn and use it yourself. Mnemonics were mentioned earlier, but those are common words, phrases, songs, something like that. Any type of memory trick to help learn definitions or steps in math or any subject, really. A couple common ones. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It's a good way to remember the order of operations when simplifying an expression. Remember parentheses first, then exponents, then you multiply and divide whatever you see first, and then you add and subtract. Or another one I've used with students or myself, all students take calc. This helps me remember which quadrant has positive trig functions. You probably don't need that in your class this time, but eventually that may be a useful one. So you can find common mnemonics online, but I really do encourage you to make up your own. They will have more meaning for you and will help you remember the things that you most need to memorize. So, if you've struggled with word problems or making sense of the reading in math, or maybe you've never even done the reading in math before, you should plan to implement several of the strategies discussed in this video. The strategies will help you to read your math book more efficiently.